I'm going to talk about kind of what we see at Boomer Consulting from our work with mid to large size firms throughout the US and Canadian firms as well. But primarily our work has been based in the US. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do first and who is this guy up here, and then get into the trends as we see them for 2025. And I'll be curious to hear from the UK, European perspective. Like, I'm going to guess a lot of them are the same, but as Mark pointed out, there may be some differences and some nuances. You're going to hear from the CIOs, and I think you're going to be able to learn some things where we are probably a little different, and we approach things a little differently, and that may be able to help you along in your journey. I think they're all here, and I'm here to also hope the same happens, that we can hear from you and take things back that can help us improve as well. So who is this guy, Jim Boomer and Boomer Consulting? Who has heard of Boomer Consulting in the room? Okay. Thank you, guys. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, they're part of one of our peer groups. So I'm not going to read my resume up here, but I'll give you a little background. I did not start at Boomer Consulting. So it was founded by my father out of a regional CPA firm in the mid-90s. We're back to the 90s again. I, in the 90s, went to work for Arthur Andersen. Great timing. So I got about 3 years in there before a thing called Enron hit. I can say I did not work on Enron. I did find a PowerPoint that had been printed out that had Enron on it, and I had to walk it to the checkout like it was a bag of you-know-what. But outside of that, no interaction. I went over to Bearing Point in a group hire of most of the consultants, and I was based in San Francisco at that time. Then did grad school down in Texas, and then came back and joined my father just shy of 20 years ago, became CEO like 9 years ago. So other than running our amazing team, I do consult with firms. I help them with their overall vision and strategy, but then I also facilitate a lot of our peer groups. So who Boomer is I talked about what firms we work with, but when we started the company, when Gary started the company, he was really focused in the technology aspect. How do we help firms with their tech strategy and governance and getting the right people in terms of connecting the technology with the firm's vision and strategy? That has evolved to these 5 pillars of success within the firms we work with. So overall leadership, talent, process, technology, and growth. And also when we started, we were, as our name would suggest, doing one-on-one consulting with firms. What evolved out of that in 1999 was a few clients coming to my father and saying, it'd be great if you brought us together and we could hear from each other. And that started with 8 firms. Today we have 130 firms that are a part of 9 different types of circles. So we're not only bringing the tech leaders together, the gentleman you'll hear from here in a little bit are part of our CIO circle that was one of the first that grew out of there, that were kind of the more strategic tech leaders that were becoming leaders of the overall firm, not just the keep the lights on and maintain the technology. And that will come out loud and clear when they come up here and grab a mic. But we've got groups for COOs, managing partners, go on down the list. So that is who we are, and you'll also see when we put together our trends for each year, we have all of our consultants get in a room and all just kind of hash out, what are we hearing when we're doing consulting and when we're sitting in these rooms with these peer groups? Because every day my job is a think tank, and I'm constantly learning and hearing what's working and what's not working. So we all kind of hash it out of what are the 5 big macro trends. And then we try to map them to these 5 pillars. So that's what I'm going to walk you through quickly. I'm going to do my best to stay on time here. So our first one is that firms really need to be adapting. They need to leverage, or they're going to become obsolete. And so, you know, Michael opened us up of there's a lot of doomsday messages out there of all this technology and AI is coming and what's it going to mean and are we going to be replaced? But we need to look at this as an opportunity. Like, it is just another tool. It is the tool of today, but we need to be willing to embrace and adapt and change. And how do we build that in and create the capacity for us to increase our capability with our clients? So that means we're going to have to evolve in the services we provide, in the skills that we're learning and that we're developing in our junior people. You know, Michael, you talked about the point of how are we going to train our entry staff if a lot of those entry-level tasks go away? Well, that's no different than like the auto industry. People had to know how to put cars together by hand. When that went away, that was not something that was a useful skill anymore. They needed to know how to operate the machinery, and they needed to know how to inspect things to make sure they were quality. The same's going to happen with our teams. So we're going to have to decide what is our vision for the firm and where are we going. And in the U.S., there's all the talk is, yes, AI, but it's also private equity, M&A, and how our firm's going to grow. And that has been the focus for the last couple of years. Now, the thing that hasn't gotten as much attention but needs to and is a little more in 2025 is organic growth is still a key component, whether you're going to go the PE route, the M&A route, or the stay independent route. And so getting serious about that is critical. As we evolve, you have to have frameworks. And so, you know, people drop project management a lot as like an all-encompassing term. But the way we look at it is there's really a transformation triangle when you're going through any kind of change or evolution. You have to have process management, project management, and change management all working together. And so we're seeing a lot of firms adopt frameworks around each of these. So in the process area, we work with a lot of firms in the Lean Six Sigma methodology. In change, we've adopted ProSci as a really systematic way to get on the upfront the people involved and bought in, aware, desiring for this change to happen. Because too often we decide a small group, this is where we're going, and then we throw it on you. And we say, this is what's going to happen, get on board. And so having a framework will allow you to be able to really focus on the future and have that agility to adapt. Because as I said, we do a lot of planning with firms, and the reality is the second you step out of a room after strategic planning, something on your plan isn't right anymore. Like something else is going to happen shortly thereafter that you're going to have to adapt and pivot. So I always say that plan is not the value of what we just went through. It was the exercise that we had the conversations and we thought through all these things that prepares us to be able to be agile and change quickly. All right, trend number 2 is redefining the rules of succession. So in the US, we have a ton of firms that are just trying to figure out how are we going to keep going. You know, we don't have the pipeline of new people coming in. We're struggling with the pipeline of leaders that have the ability or the desire to be able to come in and take over as partners in that. So there's a real focus on succession in the U.S. Is that something that's similar over here? Yes? Yeah. And so, you know, as I mentioned, there's a lot of talk about private equity or M&A as ways to deal with that challenge. But it has to go back to what your vision is. Are you creating a legacy firm, or are the owners just trying to figure out how are we going to do a successful exit? And that'll really determine how you approach succession. Now, if it is for the firm to continue on, we really need to invest time and effort in modernizing the process for succession. Timelines, you know, too often I decide to really lean into this in a year out, and you're about 2 or 3 years too late starting there. So having solid processes for when you're going to start bringing your younger people in, which should be in the beginning, that they should be brought in and building relationships with your clients. I think the other thing we see a lot is it's always focused at the top, and we're really advising clients to think about succession throughout the firm, creating sort of this human redundancy that no matter what level you're at, you should always be thinking about, if I move up, who's going to come behind me? And we also need to look at it not as just a challenge, but it's an opportunity for us to just completely change the way we're doing things. We spent the first part of this user summit talking how things haven't changed for a long time in the audit space. But we're at an opportunity where we have the ability to make a lot of change here in a short amount of time. And as we're going through succession, there's no better time than when you're having a changeover in terms of leadership and different people to start doing things differently. All right, the third area is AI readiness. We can't have our 2025 trends without bringing up AI. I'd say the key point here is don't put your head in the sand and say, wake me up when all this AI stuff is figured out. That's advice number 2. The other end of the spectrum is just go crazy with AI and do AI for AI's sake. Don't do that either. We need to really have AI and how we're using it and how we're investigating it, once again, aligned with the vision of where we want to go as a firm. And so, you know, the firms that are in the circles, many of them are still trying to figure out exactly what this is going to look like. But the thing that they're all doing is they're in motion, and they're playing with things, they're investigating things, and they're also training their teams on how to use these tools. Now, it's great to train people how to use AI and then just send them off and you're all siloed, but you also need to be bringing back that learning when people find a successful use case and say, here's a great way I used it, and here were the positive outcomes. Because if you don't have that feedback circle, then nobody learns anything about it. The other thing that achieves is the people that really gravitate to these tools and figure out how am I going to do my job more effectively and more efficiently. Our incentive systems are not set up that they should go to the top of the mountain and scream about how I did that job that used to take 2 days in 2 hours. Because what do they get? More work. Yep. Because our incentives are all based around time. So, but we need to build that in. So it brings up a whole ripple effect of we need to look at measurement systems and how are we doing performance reviews and measuring people's performance beyond just time, because it's again such a dated way of thinking about our businesses that's going to have to evolve. The other aspect of AI that I'll say is we have an amazing opportunity to better understand our client base and how we can increase our level of value. to move from just what they have to have to the things that they want to have to make their lives and their businesses better. And I believe this is going to be a key area where AI is going to play in, that we have all of this data. And the second part of that, of having an AI-ready infrastructure, and again, the CIOs up here would second this, and I know many of them are focused on data. Firms have so much data, but in the US, I know that the systems are so redundant, it's all over the place, it's a mess, and you have to step back and go, do I have a solid base of data that I can leverage AI tools on? And so you kind of have to slow down to go fast there, but once you have your data in the right state to be able to leverage these tools, we're really going to be able to dig into knowing our clients better and how we can serve them better. Now, the fourth one, this whole idea of the super worker. It's very closely related to the AI one, but this concept of super worker comes from a gentleman, Josh Bersin, who works a lot in the talent strategy space. And basically what a super worker is somebody that is effectively leveraging new technology, including AI, and has figured out how to do their job at a very high level. And we all want these people, right? But again, we're not incentivizing them in the right ways to make these behaviors happen. So we are going to have to change the way we think, investing in order to elevate people. So that is in training them in different skills than we've started with our first year staff. It's going to, our onboarding and our training is going to have to look completely different. We're going to have to redefine our talent and work models, because not only are the traditional accounting staff going to look different in the future, we're also going to see more non-traditional hires coming in. So non-traditional being non-accounting grads, because if we break down what we do, a lot of the work that can be done doesn't need to be an accountant in the US, doesn't need to be a CPA, and we can broaden our pool of talent by thinking more broadly about what we bring in, but that's going to make us change in terms of how we run the firm. So not only our talent processes need to change, but the overall work processes. And when we look at process improvement, we need to be thinking about how automation and AI and all of these technologies are going to play into those process improvements as well. All right, getting to the fifth one, rethinking the business model. So as I said earlier, all of this has such a ripple effect that there's so many things that have to be rethought and reimagined in terms of how firms are operating. The team I've touched upon already, but even that diverse and flexible talent. So beyond non-traditional hires, there's been a huge influx in sourcing and taking that approach as well. And we all know anytime you're dealing with humans, it's not just a plug and play, and it's not like buying a product off the shelf. That has cultural implications. That has process implications that we all have to take into account as well. But ultimately, you're going to be able to scale operations through that digital infrastructure. And I think Mark made the point very clearly. Digital infrastructure isn't just moving to the cloud. There are so many more elements to being a digital firm, having digital processes. But the underlying aspect of that is the point on data that I hit earlier. So with that, we often spend an hour in our circles going through these and then discussion, but with 20 minutes, I kind of had to fly through it, but I will pause there. Were there any questions that came in? I also don't want to eat too much into the time of our legendary CIOs.
What about this great one, Jim? Will blockchain ever become relevant?
I think it's already becoming relevant. We just don't hear about it. I think it was on the hype cycle, and everything was was blockchain, and people coupled it with cryptocurrency. When they heard blockchain, they thought cryptocurrency. It's not the same thing. It's the underlying technology. It is being leveraged, and I think it's going to continue to be a valuable technology that we'll see more and more, or we may not see because it's an underlying technology. But I don't remember who mentioned it. Michael, did you mention blockchain earlier? Yeah, yeah, and I mean the basics of blockchain increase trust in any transaction, and so I do believe that we're kind of in the trough of disillusionment, if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, and as more practical solutions come out, we're gonna see more practical uses of it. Time? All right. Well, with that, I'm going to invite the panel up. Mark, you're leading this crew? What?
You can if you want to.
No, I'm not that legendary. All right. I'm going to pass the mic. Thank you very much.